All right, let's get into a breaking story that many in the audience will appreciate. And unfortunately, some in the audience will be furious that I'm even talking about this. There are new Kremlin papers which appear to show Vladimir Putin's plot to put Donald Trump in the White House. Important. This doesn't mean that Trump and Putin met to concoct this plan or that Trump was directly involved. The whole point is what has been said all along for people who love to say Russiagate, 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 that Russia had a preference for Trump because of the cartoonish and destabilizing nature that his presidency would have. And they worked to help him regardless of what Trump knew or participated in. Documents suggest Russia launched secret multi-agency effort to interfere in U.S. democracy. Go by what is said, not by what you imagine I am saying and want to refute. The report, Vladimir Putin personally authorized a secret spy agency operation to support a, quote, mentally unstable Donald Trump in the 2016 U.S. presidential election during a closed session of Russia's National Security Council, according to what are assessed to be leaked Kremlin documents. The key meeting took place on January 22nd, 2016, with the Russian president, his spy chiefs, and senior ministers all present. They agreed a Trump White House would help secure Moscow's strategic objectives, among them social turmoil in the U.S. and a weakening of the American president's negotiating position. How could anyone be surprised by this? For all the people who say, David, you love to criticize Putin, Putin's brilliant. Putin's brilliant. Russia is brilliant at this. Of course, if you're Russia, you, China, and the U.S. are the three major superpowers vying for the next decade or two of supremacy among that group of three. What could do more damage to the United States than electing a cartoonish moron like Donald Trump? Russia's smart. I'm not criticizing. Of course they tried to do this. And unfortunately, the Republican electorate and subsequently enough of the electorate that voted in the general election fell for it, and Trump won. It doesn't mean Trump and Putin met to plan this. That's not how intelligence operations work. Russia's three spy agencies were ordered to find practical ways to support Trump in a decree appearing to bear Putin's signature. These are the documents believed to now be authenticated. By this point, Trump was the front runner in the Republican Party's nomination race. A report prepared by Putin's expert department recommended Moscow use all possible force to ensure a Trump victory. This is also relevant because those saying, well, Putin was involved even during the primary. Increasingly, it looks like Trump surfaced to the top of the Republican primary thanks just to the ignorance of the Republican electorate that votes in the primary. At that point at which it seemed that Trump was in the commanding position, that's when Russia got the idea, hey, it would be real. Imagine the laughingstock that the U.S. would be if Donald Trump defeated Hillary Clinton, whatever your thoughts are about Hillary Clinton. Western intelligence agencies are understood to have been aware of the documents for some months and to have carefully examined them. The papers seen by The Guardian seem to represent a serious and highly unusual leak from within the Kremlin. Let me propose something to you. OK, this is speculation. That's what we do. This is an opinion show. I want to just float an idea. There seems to be agreement that these documents are legitimate. And there seems to be agreement that this high level leak from the Kremlin is unusual. OK, I'm just going to float something here. Recently, Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin met. And as far as we believe earlier, even more recently, Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin spoke, believed to be related to cyber attacks. I'm just asking, is it possible that part of the negotiation that took place was that on the one hand, Biden would resist a counterattack shutting down a Russian oil pipeline, and in exchange, some documents would leak from the Kremlin, which rarely happens, which would illuminate exactly this about Russia's preference and work to help Donald Trump. I don't know. And the really funny part about that is that there's this idea that Trumpists have about how you project power as a leader, that comes from Trump's cartoonish nature. You push aside the Montenegrin president or prime minister, I believe president, and you talk in a certain way and you say certain things about Kim Jong-un and Putin and whatever. The real way that power actually works is you don't stomp around and scream like a child like Trump does. It's by direct, undisclosed calls where you say to a leader, hey, this is how it has to be. If you want this, then you have to do that. And it's just an idea, because it is unusual that such documents would leak from the Kremlin. So is there anything surprising here? No, there really isn't. No, this is everything we believed and that made simply logical sense. That is what it is. Now, of course, not surprisingly, the Kremlin is responding dismissively. Putin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, says the idea that Russian leaders met and agreed to support Trump in early 2016 is a great pulp fiction. The report, number 3204 VD, is classified as secret. It says Trump is the most promising candidate from the Kremlin's point of view. There's a brief psychological assessment of Trump, who's described as an impulsive, mentally unstable, and unbalanced individual who suffers from an inferiority complex. There is also apparent confirmation that the Kremlin possesses compromat or potentially compromising material on Trump, collected, the document says, from Trump's earlier non-official visits to Russian Federation territory. The paper refers to certain events that happened during Trump's trips to Moscow. Security Council members are invited to find details in Appendix 5. At paragraph 5, the document states it's unclear what the appendix contains. It is acutely necessary to use all possible force to facilitate his election to the post of U.S. president. So nothing surprising. Of course, there are people who are going to say this is also part of the lie. But, you know, for me, this has always been, there's not going to be any smoking gun of Trump and Putin meeting. Anybody who's expecting that, anybody who was even expecting the Russia stuff to lead to Trump's removal, as you can go back to April of 2017, where I say that's the wrong expectation. That's not how it works. That's not what this is. But the clear motivation for Russia to make the U.S. a cartoonish laughingstock by helping Trump, it's obvious. It would be weird if Russia didn't do it, because it's such an obvious intelligence opportunity. Many countries would think of it, but wouldn't have the know-how or the means to carry it out. Russia's really good at getting themselves involved in this stuff. That's the reality. One of the best ways to support our show is by supporting our sponsors. And today, one of those sponsors is Sheath Underwear. It's the summer. It's hot and humid, meaning with traditional underwear, we're dealing with sweating, sticking, and chafing. That is what Sheath Underwear is solving with the unique boxer brief design with the multiple ergonomic compartments in the front, keeping everything separate, dry, cool, and comfortable. This is the future of underwear. Stop wearing uncomfortable underwear that constricts and mashes. Instead, keep yourself comfy and sweat-free. With Sheath Underwear, my experience with it has been fantastic. I'm recommending it to everybody. Do yourself a favor. Try an awesome product. You can find a link right underneath this video. And don't forget to use the promo code Pakman for 20% off.